So, in this part of the webinar, we are going to talk about teacher leadership more generally. So, we are going to talk about how teachers can lead courageously with other teachers, but also how they can lead courageously with administrators and others who work at their schools. Collaboration in education is super crucial because any form of collaboration can help students see how interconnected the world is and how they can really fuse their different passions together for a lifelong journey of learning. And so I guess this is a question for you, Erin. Is interdisciplinary education a buzzword in K-12, or is there a different phrase for it?
So typically interdisciplinary education, I've heard a lot in collegiate settings. In high school, middle school, we're talking like cross-curricular, cross-content collaboration. And some schools are definitely starting to push that, I know, especially with career and tech schools. But interdisciplinary is kind of where we're getting.
Gotcha. So it's still really, really important, though, for the teachers in K-12 to try to see how, they could collaborate with their colleague down the hall in math if they're, a literature teacher, or if, to a history and an English teacher decided, hey, we're teaching the same thing kind of right now in the same time period. Is there a project our students could do where there's two components to it? Things like that, to where the students start to see, oh my gosh, like we're in this classroom learning about it and in another classroom learning about it. And now we're doing projects that are kind of connected and we're seeing different sides of it. That is really, really cool and really valuable. So how do we think, Erin, that teachers can do this, that they can lead in this way? But then how do we also think that the administrators could also be a part of doing something like that?
Yeah. So directly about the cross-curricular collaboration specifically, I know that you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, I don't have common planning time with the members of the, seventh grade team. I have common planning time with like the English department. And that can be really hard to find the time to do that during the school day, and that's just how classes are. I know a lot of schools are trying to do things like a humanities-based class where they're doing an English and a history as a double block, but again, scheduling is a conflict. So this is kind of, I want to focus on how you can look beyond just this lesson planning and unit planning to talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration and how you can find a leadership role through collaboration. So my wheelhouse right now, as the founder of the Young Educators Society of Rhode Island, is to really create a community where collaboration can happen across districts and across grade levels, not just across content. What we do with YesRI is we form monthly professional development and networking opportunities for beginning teachers in years 0 through 10. And what I have seen in not only my research, but also in practice in Rhode Island, is that when people are given the time and the space to come together and to collaborate in a relatively low stress, low pressure environment, there's huge leaps and bounds made in their own personal teaching. And then things like cross-curricular collaboration can happen. It's really tough in your first couple of years to think that, I have a voice that matters. I have a voice that can be shared even outside of my classroom to the person across the hall or to another first-year teacher that's a couple towns away. In that low pressure environment where you're able to collaborate with like-minded, like-experienced teachers, you can not only feel more comfortable to share your challenges, but also your strengths and your celebration moments that you might not share with a department chair or with the principal who's evaluating you. The whole point of these collaborative communities is that you really need to have it be low stakes, non-evaluative. And it is hard, again, to get out of bed on a Friday night to go to meet with other young teachers, but in that environment, you're more likely to feel like your voice matters because, again, low stress, low pressure. When you feel like your voice matters, you're more likely to be able to bring that confidence back into the classroom. That inspires, flexibility. It inspires respect in your school district. Not every first, second year teacher is joining the school improvement team meeting after school because they might not think that they've been around long enough to have opinions about the school. But if you're spending your weekend nights talking with other teachers around the state, and you have some great ideas that you've shared with them and you've kind of sourced that out in a low stakes environment, bring them back to your school. Teachers are more likely to take these leadership roles on committees or in department meetings or on a team meeting for a certain grade level if they've found a space to share their voice and grow that confidence in their own voice. When teachers find their confident voice, they are also more likely to be better assessors of student learning. When they can group share and think through some of the problems that they're having in their classroom, whether it's with their content or with their delivery, they ultimately become better, stronger teachers in their content area. There have been a couple studies across the country with STEM teachers, specifically in California, where when teachers were given a collaborative space to meet and have these discussions and share their ideas and kind of source them out with a lot more people, they came back and were able to deliver stronger instruction to their students and ultimately raise test scores. I know test scores are not the point of this webinar, but that's just like a perk of having these collaborative situations. The more confident teachers are, the longer they stay in classrooms as well. And I know teacher retention is a huge problem right now. I don't want to talk super long about this, but 50% of teachers in their first 5 years leave the profession, and that's a really scary number. We want to retain innovative, thoughtful, driven teachers, not just keep people in classrooms as like a placeholder, right? If you're part of a collaborative community, you're already taking those steps to become an innovative educator and change your profession in that way. Also, that inspired confidence then translates to your students. So we talked a lot about in part 2 about how you're modeling courageous leadership to your students. You can't have courageous leadership, exuding out of you as a person unless you really find a space to practice that on your own time. You can't just practice it in front of students and expect that it's going to work right away. But if you practice it around other teachers that you might have gone to college with, but teach in a different school district, or that teach in your hallways you're more familiar with on a friendly basis, you practice that, you bring it back into the classroom to model it. Collaborative communities of teachers really exemplify the tenets of courageous leadership because you're finding a space to be vulnerable and be authentic, and then you're translating those skills back into your classroom. So as difficult as it might be to find the time in your busy schedule to seek out these collaborative communities, even just sourcing it out with 1 or 2 people at the same time, maybe they're in your school, maybe they're not, that intentional and purposeful collaboration is really going to give you those courageous leadership skills to then translate them to your students.
I think that just to add to that it can be very intimidating regardless of what profession someone is in to have an idea to do something, but it may have never been done before or hasn't been done in this certain way before. So having those contacts, like Erin said, regardless of where they are, can make a person feel like I'm really scared to do this, but I'm going to be brave and I'm going to try to do it anyway. And then that can pay off for that person. But then again, it all circles back to the students, because if you do something with your colleagues that was scary, but you were brave and you did it anyway, you may then test the bounds of the things you can do in your classrooms when teaching your students.
That's such an important thing, too, because a lot of teachers teach in their silos. They close the door to their classroom, and those 4 walls really contain their practice. But if you're reaching out, even if it's on Twitter or Instagram, those are great places to build a professional learning network and collaborate just on a platform that you're familiar with. That intentionality is then going to affect your direct practice. Nobody wants to be the only person in the school doing the thing. No one wants to have that spotlight on their back, especially not a new teacher. However, having those ideas, being willing to engage in a practice that you're going to engage in the struggle no matter what the consequences, that struggle piece is really what we want to highlight as what it takes to be an effective teacher and a courageous leader.